Oh, what a night, let me tell you.
Oh, really?
Oh, well, it's just one of these things where everything seems to go left when you need it to go right.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, what it is, normally there's no one in my laundry room when I'm doing laundry because I'm like the only guy in the entire freaking complex who does laundry here.
Mm-hmm.
And I go down in between loads after I was like sort of chilling for a bit, and then sure enough, there is someone there. Okay, you want to do GammaCast first, and then we'll go to
Uh,
Cage?
either one. Either
Okay.
one.
Let's open with GammaCast, just
Right on.
because we're a little behind on GammaCast, and I want to make sure that it gets covered.
Sure.
And Cage could run a little long because we have viewer mail. Okay.
Right.
Let me just pull up the IMDb. IMDb. Incredible Hulk. Okay. Yeah, I really have not had the chance to go into the Hulu yet because they do make you buy it. It is like $8 a month, and yeah, I'm not a skinny rich guy like you, Mozz. I can't just throw around $8 like it's going out of style. I know for a hip young gentleman like yourself living in the big city, it's like, $8, there you go. That's why all the ladies love Mozz, man. He's just svelte and handsome and just money to spare. And he's a great guy with an amazing sense of humor, It's like everything you could want. What's not to love? Okay. Let's get this party started. Okay, you ready?
Let's go. Yes.
Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised it has been exposed to radiation and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
And welcome once again to the GammaCast. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend.
Hey, it's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz, welcome to Episode 13, Season 3, Proof Positive. Episode air date, January 11th, 1980, because this is the 80s Reboot Overdrive. Written by Karen Harris, directed by Dick Harwood, starring, quote-unquote, Bill Bixby, Jack Colvin, and Lou Ferrigno. And can we just say that we can call this episode Bill Bixby, bit of a diva. Oh, we love you, Bill. But yeah, bit of a diva here. Okay. This is a fun episode because we really get into the madness of Jack McGee.
All right, I bet you've been waiting for this episode for a while.
Honestly, I really didn't even know what I was going to be going into when I sat down to watch, and I was like, wow, this is Jack McGee. He's having some problems, really. I mean, to the point where, like, Jack, maybe the Hulk is not a beat you should be on. Because we open up with stock footage of Hulk walking through the desert, which we first saw in the season 2 opener, Marriage, where you have David going through these hypnotic. It's sort of a biofeedback hypnotic trance to sort of determine how he can control and deal with the Hulk. and at the time, the woman that he was working with, through guided meditation, had him essentially go to what in the comic books would be called the crossroads of the mind, where he would confront the Hulk. And yeah, it's a great. Honestly, Mozz, if you haven't seen a lot in season 2, go back, watch Marriage. It is a really great episode.
Right on.
Yeah.
Now, do you think it was very similar to the plane he was in this sequence?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically, like I said, it's stock footage. This is a stock footage episode. Meaning, like 90% of the stuff you're seeing on the screen has been shot prior to this.
Right.
You know, all the Hulk scenes are, you know, what they've added in a Jack Colvin in these scenes is basically what they've done. And then you go back and you cut back to, you know, stuff that maybe wound up on the cutting room floor in previous episodes and things like that. But we're opening up Steinhauer, who is the publisher of the Register. He's
right. So I mean, right. Just to explain what it was, Jack McGee's nightmare that he wakes up from was why the Hulk was in the dunes, and it seems to be chasing him.
Yes.
The nightmare.
The nightmare is chasing him, or he's chasing the nightmare. That is the question. Oh, and I forgot to read our synopsis here. When Patricia Steinhauer takes over her father's duties at the National Register, she takes Jack McGee off the Hulk story. Jack, whose obsession with the Hulk makes him see the Green Goliath everywhere, tries to convince her otherwise. And that gives you a great intro into it, because of course, yes, Jack is having these problems with seeing the Hulk everywhere. And you know, when Patricia comes in, who for the life of me I could have swore up and down was Sigourney Weaver. When the actress walked in, it is not Sigourney Weaver. It is, in fact, let me see here. How did she not wind up on like the first round of these?
Patty Steinhauer.
I'm looking at. They don't have her. Oh, there she is. Carolyn Smith is actually who plays the character. She doesn't have a picture here. Although, hey, for what it's worth, she was in Tromeo and Juliet. So right there, if there's any, she played Pauline in Tromeo and Juliet. So if there's anything else you want to know about this lady, she was that. She was great in this role. I really liked her. Like I said, I mean, she does look a lot like Sigourney Weaver. Yeah. So for a minute there, I was thinking, wait, did Sigourney Weaver in between Aliens, like, you know, do a Hulk episode? And nope, not so much. But Carolyn Smith plays Patricia Steinhauer, and she's great in this, despite the very heavy early 80s sexism that is unabashedly directed at her.
Right. But for what it's worth, she holds up pretty well as a character, representing women pretty well. Yeah. As far as, you know, being just as good as the men, and earns McGee's respect towards the end also.
Yeah. Although, again, that your boss has to earn your respect is kind of the problem there, I would say. Well, yeah. It's great how it does, but, you know, they do have, you know, Let's Fall in Love with Jack McGee. Again, a replay of Markie Post's brief stint.
Although I feel like if you are going to make a commentary about that situation in society, then you have to present it as it is, so that you can present the alternative to sort of point out the striking difference, you know?
Fair enough, Mozz. Fair enough. So this episode, it's very interesting because, of course, it is not a Hulk-centric episode. It is not a David-centric episode.
At all.
It is a Jack Colvin-centric episode. Now, Lou gets paid because Lou shows up, and they're using a lot of Lou footage, so Lou is in this throughout. David does not appear at all In fact,
you guess, is that him or is that somebody else?
No, that is a stand-in. That is a stand-in. I read the IMDb notes, and they said that this is like the one episode that Bill Bixby did not do.
So that's what you meant by diva. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. Because he did not even show up to. That's a stand-in the whole time. That's why you never actually see his face. That's why you don't see the eyes when it changes. It's just because Bill Bixby said, "I'm not doing it." Now it is possible that was actually a upper level call to say, David would, Bill, we're not going to fly you out for this because we don't really need you. We're just going to hire a stand-in to do this. And Bill was like, yeah, that's fine. Although I am forced to remember that, Jack Colvin has been pulled into scenes where he had exactly 2 lines,
right.
Back in the Slam. But we can say that maybe that was a budgetary question from above Bill, not Bill saying I just don't want to do it. We don't know for sure. And now our question is: do we give Bill the benefit of the doubt, or do we declare him a diva? I'm declaring him a diva. I'm just not. I don't give that kindness. So So Jack is at the register.
Yeah, and the thing, I mean, like, he wouldn't want to end up being Jack Colvin on his own show,
Yeah. Man, wouldn't that have been great had they ever done a Jack Colvin on his own a Jack McGee show? Almost like a Night Stalker, but like maybe more sci-fi, and perhaps even just dealing with normal, regular political corruption and news stories,
Yeah, that would be fun.
I mean, really, they missed the boat with Jack McGee. When they're trying to spin off a little poor man's Kung Fu Iron Fist with Rick Springfield or any of these other characters, it's like the real thing would have been Jack McGee. And for what it's worth, Marvel actually, I mean, not to say they took the Jack McGee Files idea, because obviously they came up with it long before I did, but they actually came up with this idea called, I'm trying to remember what it was called, but they basically took this premise of this reporter with the Daily Bugle and sort of this guy working the superhero beat from the 1940s up until the 60s when all the superheroes start showing up. So you start them off back in, I can't remember what it was called, but it was really good. It was one of the series that was, it was one of the painted series, where they paint every panel. It looks beautiful, and it's just this idea of that the working man reporter's view of the superheroic universe that people were coming into, and to that extent, the producers of this show with Jack McGee probably missed a boat. They're making a Jack McGee show around the idea of all the craziness that exists. And as I say, as I've said for the longest time, if the Hulk exists, we can't dismiss the UFOs and Big Feet,
Right, right.
It's like this. Like, yeah, the guys working that beat are a little more lax in their demanding of proof as Jack McGee.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, they are following up leads. There is this real interest in what they're looking at.
Yeah, and I think that's what was interesting to me about this episode was the one thing that I took away from Jack McGee's character and what spoke to me most about who he is as a person was thinking about how I would react if I had some piece of knowledge. Like if I saw aliens or UFOs or something, I probably wouldn't say anything because A, I'm not going to be able to prove it. B, no one's going to believe me and they're going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
So to see him, have the courage and the conviction to be like, no, and not be bothered at all by the fact that no one believes him. He's so staunch in his ability to prove it that he's going full steam ahead.
Yeah, well, I've always felt that there was this aspect of the Jack McGee character that was based on the idea that he is a good reporter, that he is a guy who knows what he's doing, that he actually is a reporter, a muckraker perhaps, but one that is respected in the muckraker community.
Sure.
You know, and for those who don't understand the difference, there are muckrakers and there are sensationalists. The Register, the National Enquirer are mostly sensationalist magazines. Mother Jones is a muckraker magazine. Now, Mother Jones is going to put out stuff that's maybe not the most well-researched news out there. That's a little heavy on opinion, a little light on fact, because they really are dedicated to exposing the lies of the larger military-industrial political complex. Sensationalists, like the Enquirer, like the Weekly World News, for those who remember it, although the Weekly World News was unabashedly fake in just about everything they did. And that's why I love it to this day. It's back, actually. Now it's a web magazine. Look it up, kids. Weekly World News. Bat Boy is back. And the Register tries to be sensationalist, but, you know, Jack McGee, his character is a muckraker. He wants to have the evidence. He wants to prove that this thing exists. And, of course, you know, the thing about him being at the Register is everyone dismisses everything he does. He gets put on this thing that he thinks this is just another, you know, hoax thing that he's going to have to deal with. He's going to write his article. His editor's going to take out all the words that say not really true and put in words that say absolutely true. And that's what he's thinking. And then all of a sudden he's there and suddenly there's evidence of something extraordinary. And now he has to approach it with this idea as well, the extraordinary exists. There is this thing beyond me, and if I can prove that the Hulk exists, maybe it doesn't prove UFOs and Bigfoots, but it shows that this periodical is not the rag that everyone thinks it is. It's roughly equivalent to when the Enquirer broke what was his name? Democratic senator with the haircut. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he was like a couple elections back. He was like the rising star, and then everyone found out he was stooping his media coordinator, because you know that used to be a scandal. The good old days when the merest hint of sexual impropriety was enough to completely tank your career.
Maybe Elliot Spitzer will make another run at something.
You know, right now, here's what I'm going to tell you. All bets are off, you know.
Yeah.
Elliot Spitzer, a man who is absolutely grabbed people by their kittens, is certainly someone who may yet come back and, you know, maybe a force for good in this new crazy world in which we live. Who knows? Who knows what happens next, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what the world becomes next, is just competing reality show stars to show who can be the most outrageous, you know, who can use their power for good. I guess that is what it always comes down to. Oh, but anyway, getting back to our story.
Right.
Because there is a story to discuss here. So Patricia Steinhauer, she's come into this position as the head of her father's paper, and she's basically given it. She is the Ivanka Trump, just to tie it all back to politics, of our little Marvel television universe here. You know, she has been, you know, her father has built this empire, and she is kind of being given the keys to it. And no one really respects her for her own intellect and strengths. You know, as Jack McGee says, you know, she's been spending the last, you know, several years on the jet set with all the right people, and, you know, well, he's been in the trenches, you know, earning his keep. And I
mean, I don't think he really has a problem with her or doesn't have any respect for her talents at all, because when he first hears about that she's running it, he's perfectly fine with it. Yeah. It's only when she says that we're not covering the Hulk, then all of a sudden he starts to have to try to get personal.
Yes.
And do you think there's a history between the two of them? There is, right?
I don't know. Here's what I'm going to say. From his first presentation of, oh, you've changed a lot, it kind of sounds like the last time he saw her, she was in pigtails.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, now maybe she had like, oh, Jack McGee, he's that dreamboat, dashing young reporter, back when he was a young reporter.
Right.
And maybe
but she says to him, she goes, let's keep the business and the personal separate. And then towards the end, she says, hey, one good thing is, we're no longer working together.
Yeah.
And he looks up like, yeah. So dinner,
And that's exciting, except that it's so much like the Marquee Post episode. I don't know if you were here for the Marquee Post episode. In fact, I think you weren't. I think that was season 2. Essentially, Marquee Post, who goes on to fame in Night Court, had a brief bit as an intern who falls for Jack. And I kind of think when he says there was this girl, and when she left, I didn't even notice that. I think that was supposed to be a reference to the Marquee Post character here. That was in The Confession, which we get some callbacks to, where we see man admits to being the Hulk. That was The Confession episode, which was basically this other moody loner who basically had also been obsessed with the Hulk and decided that after the Hulk shows up at the place he works, decides to go out and say, well, actually, that's because I'm the Hulk. That later pans out to be false, but Marquee Post is a central character in there. And you really walk away from that thinking, oh, wow, man, Jack and Marquee, that's going to be an ongoing thing. But again, they write her out because they barely have enough room for Jack McGee in this. Which is why you do wonder if maybe Bill Bixby is kind of the Bill Shatner of this thing, of just demanding all the good stories, demanding all the good lines, And
do you think he was responsible for what happens to Jack McGee at the top of the stairs in this episode?
Oh, wow.
First of all, he says, hey, what happened the last time you ran into the Hulk? Well, I had my gun ready, but, oh, look, silly me, I accidentally shot myself in the leg. Right? And then he takes out the dart gun and proceeds to put it in his belt, and I'm like, come on, Jack.
Yeah.
And then he's on the top of the stairs, and it is, you had to just stop and just laugh because it was so funny. But the way he runs into the other policeman and falls down the stairs and his gun goes flying, I'm like, come on.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, you have to do that kind of stuff just because he can't capture the Hulk. It's like Gilligan getting off the island. It ends the series,
Right. But I got so excited everything was set up. It felt like a real plan, not like a rinky-dink plan that's supposed to fail. Like, it didn't feel like a Wile E. Coyote plan.
Yeah.
He got her there, and, like, he was in his sights, and instead of taking the shot,
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, Jack is not a big game hunter. Jack is not a guy who, Jack is... He is comfortable traveling in all sorts of circles, but he himself is not a man. He's a reporter,
Yeah.
He doesn't carry a gun. He's not sitting there, To put it simply, this is the Marvel Comics universe at the start. Nowadays, if you're in the Marvel Comics universe, every reporter is packing a ray gun because that's just par for the course. But at this point, this is like looking back in the 1960s or in this point in the 1980s when, superheroes were new. And so he's coming in there and he's like, yeah, I guess I got this dart gun with this Ferrari, which is like, oh boy. Where he says it's not poison. It's like, it kind of is poison. Kind of is poison, Jack. I know it can be used by a professional to... in certain situations, by paramedics, you're not one of them. And those are situations where, because basically what you can use Ferrari for is like if someone's heart is stopped, you can restart it because it essentially flips the switches in your nerves. And if all your nerves are switched off, it'll switch them back on. You know.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's a real bad layman's description of it, but yeah, essentially that's what it does. It's like if you're having a heart attack, it might save you. Or,
It's like Control-Alt-Delete, Control-Alt-Delete.
yeah, basically it is the human Control-Alt-Delete, which if you do on your Apple, it's gonna kill it. When it's working fine, it's gonna kill it. So, you know, yeah. Yeah, but that's cool. But then, of course, you know, he trips, he stumbles, and for what it's worth, they have to have Jack be the one that stumbles, because if it's Patricia who's stumbling, Patricia who's keeping him from the Hulk, that does hurt this characterization. If it's Jack's own failure and for what it's worth, at the end of the story, Jack does say, you know, because Patricia is taking it on herself, and he's like, hey, you know, if I had been, you know, if I had been a better reporter, we'd probably have put the Hulk away by now.
Yeah.
To which every person watching this show says, yes, Jack, if you were a better reporter, you'd have put the Hulk away by now. Because you've had so many opportunities to just put those pieces together, you know.
Yeah.
You know, just the fact that, you know, the original David Banner looks, you know, has the same height, weight, and build as John Doe. You should have said, well, wait a minute, and then he shows up at his parents' house.
Yeah.
You know, really, Jack, you got to be. Jack needs a better wall of weird. You know, he had mentioned in a previous episode that he has a map of all the Hulk sightings, but I don't think he has that like the red tape. Because that's how you fix a conspiracy. You have to have that red tape that like goes, okay, this ties to this and this ties to that. You know,
or the push pins with the red yarn.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying red tape. You're saying red yarn.
You know, but yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, totally.
Yes, but you know, but that's where he's at now. Yeah. Oh man, I was gonna make a statement and now I've forgotten it. You interrupted me, Mozz. You broke my train of thought. So we do have the idea here that you know, so Jack has this plan. Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. Is what bugs me the most about this episode. Is that there was a story in why David is working at the smelting plant. There is a big, important story because Hulk shows up, David sticks around until Jack McGee shows up. So there's a whole side story of Bill Bixby needing to work at this smelting plant to keep things working, to be able to save the day by being there. You know that whatever there is something. You know, there was something that caused him to Hulk out in the first, because the first Hulk out we just see him running. We just see the Hulk running down, sliding down the stairs because he's too dang cool to actually walk down the stairs. You know, roar, I'm the Hulk. I'm running through here. And then,
might as well have been skipping with joy.
You know, yeah. I mean, really, you don't know what, but you know that something made him get angry or outraged. You know,
Right.
there's this whole backstory going on in this story that we never get. Because it's Jack McGee's story, and Bill Bixby couldn't be bothered to show up for it. You know, again, when you talk about like if Marvel ever does a Hulk 78 series, because I mean that is a thing now. You have Batman 66, you have Wonder Woman 77, you have these series out there of comic books where they're taking their old, somewhat campy TV properties, but then interpreting them as comic books in these really interesting ways. If Marvel ever does that, they have this great like story to tell of David at the smelting plant and how
This is true.
of why he had to stay, why he had to wait for Jack McGee to get back. And again, it's this thing where like if Jack McGee was a real good reporter, he would say, "Oh, so what was this guy's name?" And they'd say, "Oh, it was David Banyan." Said, "Gee, David Banyan," because now he's got someone who is very cooperative.
Yeah.
Who has been promised the $10,000 if the Hulk shows up, and the Hulk did show up.
Right. Well, I thought the prize always was that leads to the capture.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But then they can milk him they can milk him for information based on the fact that the Hulk did show up.
Yeah.
And
she did say to him, her deal was. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, no, I was just going to give the boilerplate. Well, we have to capture him. So, what more information can you give us on Mr. Banyan, Mr. Barton, Mr. DB?
Yeah.
Gee, DB, where have we heard that before? The Hulk is DB
it's
Cooper.
like the 30th David something that starts with a B that he's run into in his travels.
Well, that's the thing is McGee never actually gets his name.
Huh.
The only time he ever got his name was when he was John Doe. That's why he's calling him John.
Man, he really is a terrible reporter.
Well, what it is most people who know David's name don't want to give information to him.
That's true too.
So like for example, when he went to the cabbie, the cab company, Esther does not want to give him information.
Right.
She's intentionally thwarting him in his quest to the Hulk. This was the one time where they had some guy who was like, "Yeah, I'll tell you who he was. He was my buddy. We went for beers last week. His name is." It was like the one time he went by the name of Brent Steiner. It's just a completely randomized name. Because he could do that at any time. He doesn't have to always be David something starting with a B. He could actually give himself a new name.
He's just lazy, or again, maybe much like the actor that portrays him, he's a diva and refuses to be called anything but David.
Yeah,
I won't answer to nothing else.
Which isn't even his name. It's like the funniest thing about the whole David Banner, Bruce Banner thing is, David. They went with the name David Banner because they felt Bruce was too effeminate and they wanted a stronger masculine name. Which is why they went with David. Except in the comic books, Bruce Banner's name actually isn't Bruce Banner. His first name is Robert.
Huh.
His first name is Robert Bruce Banner. Because, as it turns out, that Stan Lee, who is notorious for having a horrible memory, forgot that his name was Bruce Banner and started writing him in as Bob Banner. And someone went back to him and says, you actually named that character Bruce Banner. Says, oh, well, Bruce is his middle name. His actual name is Robert Bruce Banner. And then when they did this film, rather than going with Bruce Banner, they went with David Banner, and his name is actually David Bruce Banner, which you see on his tombstone. But they could have just called him Robert Bruce Banner.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, but I think probably they didn't want the alliteration.
Right.
The alliteration is what marks you as a comic book, and of course, as we know, the people who made this did not want to be associated with the comic books because reasons. It's always one of those weird things like, well, we want to buy this comic book property, which is very popular among people who like the comic book. However, we do not want any association at all with the comic book. We want to just push that away. It's like, it's kind of like, buying the rights to The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but saying, you know what, we really want it to have a happy ending. Hello, Disney. We're making fun of you now. Yeah, Hunchback of Notre Dame does not have a happy ending. It's a very, very sad story. Read it though, kids. It's well written. Okay. So, of course, as you can probably imagine at this point, the Hulk does get away.
Right.
And unfortunately, Mr. Steinhauer's current marriage ends quickly. Thank heavens for prenups, you know.
Right. Right.
You know, that's what you say, man. This was a prenup thing, and he's like, you know what? Yeah, sorry, sweetheart. All you had to do was go this 4-month world tour vacation and just have sex with me, and we would have been fine.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know that
But
it was her. It might have been him. He said, you know what? I want to have sex with other people now, too. So, you know, it could have been that, too. It could have been... We don't know who queered the deal, but the deal got queered. And so he decided to come back and send his daughter away. Because, man, this Steinhauer guy, he's not that nice a person. That's all I got to say. It's like... I'm done with you now, daughter. Please go back to wherever it is I keep my offspring. You know, I was gonna let you be in charge of things while I was doing something else, but now I'm back, and so go back to that place that I keep you.
Yeah, I'll take that back now.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Steinhauer, you are. Of course, you know Register News is big in the Marvel universe right now. You know he owns the Fact Channel, which is the Marvel Comics version of Fox News. You know that Mr. Steinhauer.
Ah.
Yeah. They have the in comic books because they don't want to actually use anything's name. That's why all the organized crime is with the Magia.
It is not.
It is. It is the Magia. Maggia. The Magia.
Wouldn't that be the Magia?
It is.
Two G's?
It does have a hard G.
It's a hard G?
It is.
Oh, Jesus.
Apparently, everyone who pronounces it with a hard G. Now, we could go find Stanley and ask him, is it the Magia or the Magia? I think the double G is what gives it the hard G.
See, I assumed that would give it the I don't know if it would be the soft or whatever.
Well, how many G's did DiMaggio have?
I think it had one.
Yeah, so I think the GI gives you the soft.
Right. I was just thinking, like, if you think of focaccia, you know, CCIA gives it the CH sound, so I figured...
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you're wrong. There's not a lot of words with a double G in them, you know, right in the middle, you know, so...
Yeah. Well, either way, that is pretty funny, regardless. The Magia.
Yeah, but so there is the Fact Channel. There are these excuse me. There are these surrogates. J. Jonah Jameson is now a lead commentator for the Fact Channel, and everyone knows who J. Jonah Jameson is.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's that. So Steinhauer comes back. Patricia makes fluttery eyes at Jack. And we're going to look at Carolyn Smith, see if she ever shows back in The Incredible Hulk. And I'm going to say the answer is no. Let's see here. Nope, one episode entirely. Ooh, but she played the young woman in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. And she was in an adaptation of Brave New World, which is one of my favorite sci-fi books. She was in Battlestar Galactica, where she played a bank teller. I mean, she's out there. She was Sandra Guilford in St. Elsewhere and Aids and Comfort. Oh, she was in Peaceable Kingdom. The episode was Moonstruck. She played Fran. Yeah, I mean, she's out there. She works. She's an actress. She was very good. And just goes to show you, you know, talent does not guarantee a career. You need time, you need talent, and you need opportunity, you know? And, you know, there are people who have talent and opportunity, but no time. You know, she may be living a full and complete life outside of acting, and she wishes she could act more, but just never has a chance. You never know, man. That's what makes life hard. What are you going to do next? Okay. Mozz, is there anything else do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
No, I thought it was, one of the slower, one of the sillier episodes.
Yeah.
That, and it's surprising to say that since it involved very little Hulk action, which is where all the silliness usually comes from.
Well, to be fair, I think there was a lot of Hulk action. It's just all in Jack's mind. I mean, what did you think of the constant Hulk hallucinations?
I dug the Hulk hallucinations. A point in the beginning was interesting where, in the earlier episode, when David is under hypnosis and travels to this sort of far-off plane in his own mind. I wonder if it's like a collective sort of thing that everybody goes to, if there was some sort of reference to something like that. Mm-hmm. But I doubt it.
Maybe. You never know. Okay.
But yeah, I thought it was, one of the slower episodes.
Okay, yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. It is slow. I liked that it was. I liked what it gave me though. From Jack McGee on the ledge and everyone thinking he's about to jump off, to the casual misogyny, which is always fun, to the eventual hoisting by his own petard of Jack McGee, even though it all puts us back to square one. I like this episode. I have to say this was probably I'm not going to say it was a favorite. I mean, here's what I'll say. As an episode I had no childhood memory of, this is certainly an episode that now, looking back on it as an adult, I'm like, wow, I really liked this episode.
Huh.
So maybe that means that, it's a good episode. I don't know. Some of these episodes, they stick with me from when I watched them as a child. And I'm waiting for them, and then I watch them and go, oh, that's not what I remembered at all. This episode, really.
Of these.
The voodoo episode I thought was very different than what it wound up being. I was like, really? This was what I was remembering? This is not what I thought it was at all. Now, maybe there's another voodoo episode later that's a little different, but, from what I've seen, I was like, oh, okay. But this was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it, and I really have to put it as a top-notch episode from my perspective.
Right on.
We'll see as things go on. For those who don't know, Netflix is no longer carrying this, so we have got to figure out where we're going to watch these episodes. Hulu only has the third season.
Right, only has the first 3.
Yeah. Myself, I watched this on YouTube. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't be evil. But what are my choices?
Well, I'm very comfortable with my dark side, so yeah. I'm probably just going to go torrent it.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, well, if I can find it, I'm going to buy this season on DVD or Blu-ray, because now I figured out how I can set up my Blu-ray with my normal regular DTV. So I just have to buy an HDMI adapter. Of course, then I have to run it through the AB switch. So it's a little crazy, but I know I can do it. I can make it work. But yeah, so Mozz, if people want to reach out to you, find out what you're up to, how can they find you?
They can send me an email. My email is mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
Excellent. And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the ways our Mozz and Poz once did, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And follow me on the Twitters, because I really do like to live tweet The Incredible Hulk at 7 o'clock on Saturdays on MeTV, although I have not done so the last 3 weeks. For various reasons, mostly the holidays, I'll be honest with you. But you can follow me on Twitter at CharlieEsser, that's CharlieEesser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hulking out with us tonight. Please hulk out with us again. Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.